The doorbell rang at 4:12 p.m. sharp. I had just set the pie on the counter to cool. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and opened the door with a smile that faded the second I saw Nolan's face. He didn't hug me, didn't step inside. He stood on the porch with his coat zipped high and a suitcase in one hand, my suitcase. I thought we agreed on this, Mom. He said like we'd had some kind of conversation. It's just for a little while. A place where you can rest. I blinked. Rest from what he avoided my eyes. You've been off. You left the stove on last week. Missed my call Tuesday. And, well, Bree and I just think it's time you had some help. I looked past him hoping to see the kids in the car. There was no car seat. No wrapped gifts. Just a quiet engine and a cold December breeze pressing at my back. The pie sat cooling on the counter behind me. He never asked to come in. The ride was quiet. He didn't turn on the radio. I didn't ask where we were going. I knew it wasn't his house. I knew it the moment we passed the turnoff. The sign said, Greenridge Living, Compassionate Care for Seniors. I stared at it as he pulled into the lot. Inside, the receptionist already had my name printed on a clipboard. Nolan handed over a manila folder. I didn't ask what was inside. I didn't want to hear more reasons. He kissed the top of my head quick and sterile and mumbled something about calling after New Year's. Then he left. The room was small, warm, and too quiet. The bed was neatly made, untouched. I sat down slowly, my coat still on hands, gripping the edge of the mattress like it might tip. My suitcase was at my feet. It was already unpacked. The hallway smelled faintly of disinfectant and lemon polish, though nothing in sight looked truly clean. Plastic garlands were taped crookedly to the wall. A fake tree leaned in the corner by the elevator, blinking unevenly in red and green. Someone had drawn a smiley face on the whiteboard near the front desk. It didn't help. I walked the short distance back to my room, clutching my purse like it still meant something. Inside, the nurse had left a folded robe on the end of the bed. I ignored it. No one here knew who I was. Not the nurse, not the two women playing dominoes in the common room, not the aide who offered me lukewarm coffee with too much powdered creamer. They smiled the way people do when they're trying to be kind without getting involved. I called Nolan. Straight to voicemail. I waited an hour. Tried again. Nothing. When I asked the front desk if he'd left a number or any details, the woman looked uncomfortable and said, "There's a note here. No family visits until after the holiday. She needs rest." Rest. From what my life, I went back to my room and sat on the edge of the bed again. This time, I opened my purse. There, wrapped in gold paper and a red ribbon I tied myself, was the small gift I'd bought for Henry, my grandson. A puzzle of North American birds, the kind he used to sit and name with me when he was 4. He's 8 now. I don't know if he still cares about birds. I placed it gently on the side table. Didn't unwrap it. Didn't cry. My hands trembled when I buttoned my sweater that evening. But my thoughts were clear. They've always been clear. I glanced at the wall calendar. Friday was circled in blue. That must have been me last week when I bought a lottery ticket at the grocery store. I remember laughing to myself as I did it. What were the odds I left the lights on when I lay down that night, the wrapped puzzle still untouched by the window? Christmas morning passed like any other Sunday. The hallway buzzed faintly with distant chatter, a television game show, a cart squeaking over tile. I waited until noon for a call that never came. My phone stayed dark on the nightstand, its charger coiled neatly beside it. At lunch, an aide delivered a tray of food, overcooked vegetables, a slice of turkey so dry it split when I cut it. "Merry Christmas, Mrs. Dray," she said kindly before moving on to the next room. I thanked her and smiled. When she left, I folded the napkin over half the food and set it aside. By late afternoon, the snow outside had turned to a dull mist that clung to the window. I walked to the rec room, drawn by the sound of laughter. A few residents sat around a television, their faces bathed in the glow of the screen. Someone had brought ginger snaps. Someone else had turned up the volume. "The state holiday drawing begins in 2 minutes," the announcer said brightly. A man in a plaid sweater joked about retiring twice if he won. I smiled politely and reached into my coat pocket. The lottery ticket was still there, folded and worn at the corners. I hadn't even remembered to check the date. The announcer began reading the numbers. 32, 15, 41. I glanced down at the slip in my trembling hands. The first 3 matched, then the 4th, the 5th, and when the 6th appeared on the screen, my vision blurred. I blinked hard, checked again. The same 6 numbers stared back at me in perfect sequence. Someone nearby laughed about being 1 digit off, but I could barely hear them. My pulse pounded in my ears. The announcer cheerfully added that the ticket had been purchased at a grocery store on Maple Avenue. That was my store. I folded the ticket carefully, pressing the edges flat. Around me, the room had returned to chatter and Christmas lights. No one noticed me rise from the chair, slip the ticket into my pocket, and walk back to my room, steady, as if nothing had changed. I waited until the rec room emptied before I approached the front desk. A nurse named Dana sat behind the counter, tapping softly at her keyboard. She looked up with that practiced smile they give all of us. I pulled the ticket from my coat pocket, unfolded it carefully, and laid it flat on the desk between us. "I think I need someone to verify this," I said quietly. Dana leaned forward, squinting at the numbers. Then she opened her browser, typed in the state lottery page, and compared them out loud. Her voice dropped as she reached the final digit. She looked up at me. Her hand covered her mouth. "Mrs. Dre, this is real." I nodded. "Please don't tell anyone." "Not yet." She hesitated, then nodded back. "Of course." She disappeared for a few minutes and returned with a fresh wool blanket, still wrapped in plastic. "It's new. From the holiday supply drive. I thought you might like something softer tonight." "Thank you," I said. Her eyes understood more than her words let on. "She offered to call someone family," she said. "Or a friend." I told her no. I'd already been called what I needed to be called this week. I sealed the ticket in an envelope and slipped it under my pillow like a child guarding a secret. That night, I slept curled on my side, warmer than I'd felt in days. In the morning, I asked Dana if I could use the landline at the desk. She handed me the receiver without question. I dialed a number I hadn't used in years. When a familiar voice answered, I introduced myself, reminded him I had once held his mother's hand through her final breath, and asked if he could come quietly to Greenridge that afternoon. "Of course," he said. "I remember you well." His voice was calm, curious. I told him it wasn't urgent, but it mattered. He asked what had happened. I smiled to myself and said, "I think I'm going to need a lawyer." Mr. Halbridge arrived just after noon on the 27th. He wore a navy sweater over a wrinkled shirt and carried a leather case that had clearly seen years of work. No tie, no fanfare, just calm, focused presence. He shook my hand and asked to speak somewhere quiet. Dana offered her office and shut the door behind us. I slid the envelope across the table. He opened it, inspected the ticket, then nodded slowly. "Well, Mrs. Dre, you weren't wrong." We spent the next hour going over details. He called the lottery office to start the formal claim. I showed him my identification, and he helped me fill out the forms with deliberate care. Then came the harder part. He asked about my current account's joint ownerships, authorized users, anything Nolan might still have access to. I gave him the names, the bank, the condo lease I'd co-signed 3 years ago when Nolan said the mortgage would fall through without me. He took notes, then unfolded a folder from his case. "I can file to revoke any shared rights. That includes power of attorney. And we can freeze any joint lines immediately if you'd like." I didn't hesitate. "Yes. Remove him from everything. All of it." He nodded without judgment and drew up the first document. My hands didn't shake as I signed. Not once. When we finished, he leaned back and looked at me carefully. The lottery office is doing a short, human interest segment tomorrow. They asked if you'd speak on camera just a few minutes. Your story is compelling. I smiled. I imagine it is. It's optional, of course. But it might be good to control how your name gets out. You'll be listed in public records. I thought of Nolan's face, the way he wouldn't meet my eyes as he handed over my suitcase. I'd like to look my best, I said softly. He smiled and said he'd take care of the details. As he packed up his case, I folded the blanket Dana had given me and smoothed the bed. The news van arrived just before lunch, quiet and unassuming. Dana met them at the entrance and walked them through the back garden, where they set up a single camera and a boom mic near the wooden bench beneath the arbor. I wore the soft gray sweater I'd packed for Christmas dinner, the one I never got to wear. My slacks were pressed. I brushed my hair, slowly parting it the way I used to before long shifts at the hospital. I didn't wear makeup. I didn't need it. The reporter was kind younger than I expected and careful with her questions. She asked about the ticket where I bought it. I told her Maple Market aisle 3 between the milk and the dry goods. She asked what I planned to do next. I said I'd rest for a little while. Maybe buy a home of my own again. Nothing fancy, just something with quiet walls. Then she asked if I had anything I wanted to say to the public. I looked at the camera, then past it. I've worked my whole life, raised a son, cared for people who couldn't care for themselves, and like a lot of older folks, I started to feel invisible, I said. I took a slow breath, then added, sometimes the best gifts arrive after everyone else has left. She smiled, clearly moved. We wrapped a few minutes later. I thanked them for their time. By 6 o'clock, the interview aired across the county. I didn't watch it live, but I knew exactly when it hit. Because at 6:03 p.m., my phone lit up on the nightstand. Missed call, then another, then a message, then 4 more. Nolan saw it. I could picture their kitchen. Bree's fork pausing halfway to her mouth. The television showing my face calm and clear, holding the check with the state seal. $2 million. No fanfare. No shouting. Just me. The phone buzzed again. This time I let it ring until the sound dissolved into silence. The first call came just after dinner, then another and another. By midnight, the phone was a restless thing on the nightstand, buzzing every few minutes, glowing with his name. I let it ring. I listened to the rise and fall of his voice in the voicemails, shock at first, then guilt, then panic. He stumbled over apologies that sounded too practiced, too late. Mom? I didn't mean for things to go this way, he said in one. You know we were only trying to help. The next message was longer, quieter. You must be so overwhelmed. Bree and we made mistakes. Let's start fresh. We can fix this. His words landed with the same weight as the car door closing on Christmas Eve. At 1:17 a.m., an email arrived. Bree's tone was polished, almost professional. She wrote about family healing, about how public attention could be harmful, about how they'd like to help me manage things responsibly. I deleted it before reaching the second paragraph. One message I couldn't delete. Nolan's last one before dawn. His voice cracked halfway through. I saw you on TV. You looked happy. I guess I didn't know what that looked like on you anymore. Then a long pause. Please call me. I didn't. When morning came, the world outside my window looked the same pale sky, empty parking lot. But something inside me had shifted. I folded the blanket Dana gave me and smoothed the corners of the bed. Then I walked to the nurse's station and asked for the discharge forms. You're leaving? Dana asked, surprised. So soon I'm fine now, I said, and meant it. It's time to go home. She smiled softly. Where will that be? I looked out toward the road beyond the glass doors, where frost was melting from the grass. Somewhere. I choose myself. By noon, Mr. Halbridge had arranged a car. I carried only my purse, a folder of documents, and the same small suitcase Nolan had packed for me. It was lighter now, but everything that mattered was inside. I didn't ask to return to my old apartment. I didn't even drive past it. Instead, Halbridge and I toured 3 homes in a quiet town, 15 miles south of Greenridge. The third one sat on a corner lot at the end of Garnet Street, unassuming with pale shutters and a single step to the front door. I knew before stepping inside that it was mine. The house had no grand staircase, no vaulted ceilings, but the kitchen caught the morning light just right, and there was enough space out back to plant wildflowers come spring. The bathroom had handlebars. The bedroom faced east. I could breathe there. I paid in full. No mortgage. No co-signers. Just my name on the deed. The agent asked if anyone else should be added to the paperwork family. Maybe I looked her in the eye and said no. The first thing I placed on the kitchen counter wasn't a vase or a bowl of fruit. It was the sealed envelope with my ticket and a fresh folder of documents, things I now controlled. After the utilities were set up and the furniture delivered, I made one more call to Halbridge's office. I asked what it would take to start a small fund, nothing public, nothing flashy, just enough to cover emergency needs for seniors stuck in long-term care without support. Grocery cards, legal fees, clean blankets, dignity in pieces. He called it an advocacy program. I didn't call it anything, just a quiet promise to people I'd left behind and people I might never meet. That evening, I stood in the empty yard and watched the sun slip behind the neighboring rooftops. I could still hear Nolan's last voicemail in my head, but the words didn't sting like they used to. They just hung there, a sound from another room I no longer lived in. I closed the door behind me. The lock turned smooth and solid in my hand. The knock came just after 9. I was rinsing the coffee pot when I heard it 2 quick taps, then nothing. I waited, drying my hands slowly before going to the door. No car in the drive, no footsteps retreating down the walkway, just a box sitting neatly on the welcome mat. Inside a cellophane window, I saw 6 muffins blueberry, I guessed, with sugar crusted on top. Next to them, a pale blue envelope with my name in Nolan's handwriting. I stood for a long time looking at it. Then I picked up the box and carried it into the kitchen. I didn't open the envelope. I didn't need to. Instead, I placed it on the windowsill above the sink, right where the morning sun hit the glass and warmed the sill each day. It leaned slightly against the frame, quiet and still. I turned back to the counter where the mint plant had started reaching too far in one direction. I pinched the outer stems gently, snipping them back with care, letting the scent rise and spread into the room. It smelled clean, alive. By afternoon, I had a small box packed nothing fancy. A fresh robe hand lotion, 2 crossword books, and a jar of candied pecans I'd made yesterday. I added a note. Thinking of you always, M. It was for Ms. Darlene, my old roommate at Greenridge. The one who played hymns softly on her radio and always offered half her biscuit at breakfast, even when I said no. I taped the box shut and called Halbridge's assistant to arrange a courier drop-off. She said she'd handle it by morning. As the sun dipped behind the houses again, I set the kettle on and watched the steam curl above the stove. The unopened card remained on the sill, its weight neither heavy nor light. Just present. I didn't throw it away, but I didn't read it either. The coffee was hot, not too strong, just the way I liked it. I drank it slowly, leaning against the counter in the hush of the kitchen. The refrigerator hummed softly behind me. No photos on the door, no handprint turkeys, no crooked smiles from school picture day. Just a grocery notepad with a few scribbled items, eggs, lentils, soap. A clipped recipe for lentil stew was held in place by a plain magnet shaped like a lemon. Outside the window, the sky was pale and open. The air didn't move, No rustling trees, no birds darting through the yard. Even the street was still. I glanced at the mailbox. Empty yesterday. Likely empty again today. I didn't mind. The peace in this house wasn't loud or decorated. It didn't wear banners or smell like candles. It sat beside me quietly, filling the space between breath and movement. I didn't have to earn it or protect it or explain it. It just lived here now. The envelope still sat on the windowsill right where I'd left it. I hadn't moved. It hadn't opened it. But I hadn't pushed it away either. Some things didn't need answers. Some things didn't need to be invited back in. I poured the rest of the coffee and stepped out onto the back patio. The air was cool but not sharp. My mint plant had started to sprout again. Small leaves reaching up. I brushed my fingers gently through them and let the scent rise on my hands. The day stretched ahead without demands. No visitors, no duties, no waiting. I thought about reading, or maybe baking, or maybe just sitting here for a while longer. This wasn't victory. It wasn't triumph. It was something steadier. A quiet weather settling in. I looked at the plant at the house at the fence that marked the edge of the yard and smiled without meaning to. The ground here felt solid. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was standing at the edge of anything.